All right, boys. Are we hype? Are we hype for the presidential debate? The battle of a lifetime. Once in a lifetime. Can you imagine they start throwing punches? Don't say that, man. On the left, we have Kamala Harris. On the left, Donald J. Trump. And on the right, Kamala Harris. We'll see who he'll vote for. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final.
President Trump won the coin toss.
President Harris left the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome.
Oh my God, dude! I'm so into politics now. Politics is literally just here. It is. Yeah. Oh, that's hype. That's Riz. They put the handshake. That's Riz.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
I'm 19.
So
I need to pay attention to this.
We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children.
What the fuck? He's not as
My
orange
plan
as
is to
usual.
give a
He hasn't been as orange as usual
$50,000
usually
tax
for a while.
deduction.
He's only
Everyday
78. You're
goods
saying that
that
like
you
that's
rely on.
young.
They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've
China.
lifted tariffs on. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before. Probably the worst in our nation's history.
I can
We
pay the
were
debt.
at
Don't worry.
21%, but
KSM's
that's
here with
being
us.
generous. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy.
All right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook.
She used that same line last week. This is kind of
What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing. No, we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not.
I don't even know what it is.
We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic.
Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks.
He was promoting horse tranquilizer instead of the vaccine. He didn't even like masks, bro. Why is he actually mewing? I'm crying. Is this your first like Donald Trump debate? He mews all the time while he's not talking. I never realized he mewed. He created mewing.
Because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's a hard-ass line. That's a hard-ass bar.
I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China, to help them
yeah.
improve and modernize their military, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI,
chips, potato chips. KSM's just happy.
Focusing on what we need to
KSM's
do
just chilling on this.
America's
shit.
But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually
Holy
thanked
shit, she's low-key
President
popping
Xi.
off.
Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi! Exclamation point. When
He's like, yeah, I did that shit.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy.
Not true.
She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy.
That's a banger.
If she ever got elected,
That's a banger quote, though.
And he taught her well. But when you look
Why
at
is
what
she
she's
doing
done
that?
to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people
Don't be
that fly into
emoting.
our
Don't be
country
emoting.
monthly, she's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist.
She's a
21 million
Marxist.
people, not
She's
the
a
15 that people
Marxist.
say. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump touted that you were able
This should
to
be
kill
this should
Roe
be
v.
a
Wade
cake.
last year.
This should be
You
a
said
cakewalk
that you
for
were
Kamala.
proud. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia.
He's gonna straight up
not the
start
current
lying
governor,
now.
so
They actually do it in the
governor
10th month
before.
abortion. I can't
Also
believe he
picked, by the way,
still
for our
runs with this
country,
with this
because he
like
is really out of
this
it.
bit.
But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states, and through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting
Can
on
I
it.
be aborted
And
at
for
this
the first
age?
time,
It's just murder.
you're
He could have just spun his
each
nuts around and gotten more
individual
votes than
state
saying this shit
is
again. It's
voting.
incredibly
It's the vote of
unpopular.
the
I don't know
people now.
what's
It's
like.
not
Like you're not
government.
winning
I
much
did a
just
great
doing this
service,
shit.
And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Real,
Vice President, what is your
real.
response to
God, that is so
Well, as I
easy,
said, you're gonna hear
bro.
a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact.
He's getting bad Sims interactions right now.
And they
That's so
did
stupid.
exactly
Like
this
negative
over
friendly,
twins.
negative
There
reputation.
are Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral.
This is a great response
And
so far.
one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot.
Dude,
That?
this is
Her
actually
husband
like
didn't
the
want that?
best response
A 12 or 13-year-old
I've ever
survivor
seen.
of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
That's
President
tough.
Harris.
Well,
That's
there she goes
tough.
again.
That's
It's a
genuinely
lie.
tough. That's crazy.
I'm not
All
signing
right.
a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter.
He's gaslighting everyone because he's literally the one who was in favor with it.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening.
Let's be real, though. He's just talking in circles. He doesn't have a response for this, so he's rerouting the conversation elsewhere and just making it a complete circle. That's always been like the Donald Trump debate cycle, usually. He's trying to DVD loop her. It's not working. She's got a crazy nurse. I guess he's starting to realize he can't do that since Kamala has actual responses. It also helps that she's a straight-up woman and she's very passionate about it. So she just comes off like better than like Joe Byron would.
I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it.
I'm a leader. Is he coming out saying that he's a sperm donor?
In the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month.
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you?
Ooh, they didn't mute anyone. They're not muting anyone. Oh, this is tough. They're already going against their mutes. This is kind of hype.
Former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border
security. They already went against like the mutes and shit. They were just like, all right, just let them go crazy.
In this country. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his
He's probably going to run with that. He's probably going to run with
like
this quote.
And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go.
Now he's going to talk about rallies, bro. He's going to talk about crowd sizes.
And then
this is funny as fuck. Bro, this is
so she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies.
He's going to I actually have a bigger dick than you, okay? Anyway, the bill, don't mind that.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
What is he on about? Wait, what?
Rallies are concerned.
What are we talking about now, bro? Why are we talking about people eating pets?
And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to
That's a
clarify here. You bring up
crazy
Springfield.
clip.
ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims.
Oh, we're not even
going to
ask him about the bill, bro. That's crazy.
The people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to
We'll find out.
This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush.
This
Mitt
is
Romney,
true. This is a
and John
solid.
McCain. Just ask people who have worked with him.
This is a good. This is a good route to take. Talking about how the people that have worked with him all like pretty much hate him. Or don't want him as president again.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. They have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But
why do we
just
care
to finish,
about
I got
books
more votes
being written
than any Republican
about you?
in
That's
Trump,
worth a book
call
being
this the
written about
largest
you.
Domestic. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Oh shit!
They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. Crime is down all over the world except here.
Millions of criminals, and it's just my friend Steve who plays Terraria and works as a library receptionist.
Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump,
A
as you
new
know,
form
the
of
FBI
crime, and
says
it's called
overall
migrant
violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President Harris,
the
I'll
FBI
give you
they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted
That's tough.
for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable.
She's
and his next
high-key been
court
like
appearance is in
on.
November,
She's
and
on.
his
She's
own
on
criminal
this whole freaking
let's
debate,
be
bro. I
clear,
genuinely
turn
think
the
she's gonna win.
page
I don't know. I was
on
super
this
worried, but
same
this gives me
old
some hope.
tired
It was
rhetoric
pretty
and
much all
address
kind of like
the needs of the
on the
American
tilt of
people,
how good her
address
debate
what
would
we
be,
need
and
to
so
do
far her debate is
about
going
the
crazy.
House. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris.
I don't like that she keeps using that
Excuse me,
line. She keeps
every
repeating
one of
that
those.
line.
By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total
I mean, we don't care about
victory.
Joe
2
Biden
months
right
ago,
now, though.
it was
The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris.
him.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory
it's gonna be
government
tough for her.
buyback. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on
Now Trump's
foreign oil.
emoting.
We have the values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times.
Oh, that's a tough
It's
tough
a
line.
value that
That's
I bring to my
that's a tough
work.
line.
My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling.
Well, first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn
It was
builder,
only a
Brooklyn,
million.
but I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many,
Only a
many
million.
billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. She was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now.
I love it when Mark
You don't
lies.
mind,
I'm not
please.
like, oh,
Does that sound familiar?
She's trying. Oh, he's trying to farm a
She
clip.
went out.
He's trying to farm a soundbite. That's
went out
hard.
to
He doesn't go as
Minneapolis.
hard because her
She went
microphone
out
was
and
off,
raised
but I
money. She
see
did
it.
things. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one.
Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to
shit.
march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with
Oh,
them.
shit.
You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. We didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that.
Can you
When
imagine
are
he
they gonna
screams,
be
"I regret
prosecuted?
nothing"?
When
He's
are these
almost,
people
he
from
almost pretty
countries
much
all
just
over the
saying
world-
that.
So let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. The former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. And be clear, on that point, Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. if he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked
That's
immigration
so
here
weird.
tonight. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after
That's
you
so
lost the 2020
weird.
election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say it.
sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look.
He didn't use the slash star.
Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm. Lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it.
You should have slashed hard.
Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming
I'm starting to get violent. I need my BRB. When you got a non-American getting violent, that's crazy.
One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And
that's kind of a
clearly
bar.
He's having a very difficult time processing that.
That's low-key a
But
bar.
I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes.
He is right about that, low-key.
And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm okay with it because
your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that.
Zionist, but at least she's seeking a
solution,
ceasefire.
there must
I mean, she's
be
been saying
But
this.
the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel.
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there.
Israel's pretty much
When he
committing a
went to
genocide on
Congress to make a
Palestine,
very
trying to wipe
important
them off the
speech,
map.
she
Yep,
refused
and
to
we're
be
like
there 'cause
arming
she
them.
was at a
Like we are
sorority
helping
party.
them.
She
And
wanted
like
to go
Kamala
to the
Harris just said,
sorority
like
party.
I'm
If she's
committed to
president, I
giving
believe
them
that
the
Israel will
ability
not
to defend
exist
themselves.
within
And like
daytime
yes,
in her
she
own
like we
way.
want a
She hates the
ceasefire,
Arab
but it's like we
population.
are
The
continuing
whole
to help them
place
out. We
is
are
gonna
continuing
get
to supply
blown
them.
up.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
That's crazy. I mean, that was all right. She was cooking for like the whole beginning, and then we started getting into like wars and shit. I mean, she's still holding up, and it's still looking very good. It's because the thing, like when it comes to like debating Trump, as long as you look like a normal person and like you don't let yourself like get bullied or whatever the fuck, it's very easy to make him look like a fucking weirdo, like live on television. And she was very capable of doing that. It was fairly easy for her to like come off as like a lot more mature, a lot smarter, a lot like more suited. She's really not letting Trump run bits on her like clip farm as much as he would have been able to with like Biden. MarcLIVE 2025. All right, we're back.
Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. You take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced.
I need one of them to say Hakatua.
Okay, they respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. And we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
They threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice
took the
President
perk.
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
That's crazy. That's oh my God.
Harris,
That's
thank you.
dude. She also took the perk.
I wanted her to respond.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy.
I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders.
The Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed.
I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black.
This is crazy.
And now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care.
Well, that's a comment you
make a big
fucking
deal out of something.
made.
Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember,
How is this related to the presidency? I've always thought it was so fucking weird
buildings.
how like he went
and
on that tirade of being like, oh, she wants to be black now. She wants to be black. Even when she became like vice president, like it was a thing that she was going to be like a black vice president, like a black women vice president, like when she originally became vice president. And I don't understand how this is like is even a thing.
We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden. And I am certainly not Donald Trump. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction.
She's starting her policies.
To pursue
That's good.
their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank
you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump.
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
going
just need
to move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now
times.
your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. Access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask me. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs.
They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
That wasn't as interesting as like the rest of the debate. That whole little section is more like, she's not Joe Biden. I do hate, yeah, dude, that's another thing that like Trump has constantly been doing. He constantly brings up Joe Biden this, Joe Biden that. And it's like, this is not Joe Biden. You can't really use those plans as like his only like attacks against Kamala is just a race thing. But even then he can't do that. So he just comes off as fucking insane. His strongest point is literally just like war shit. And even then, that's a lot of just like hearsay. Oh, we're back.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward.
Kind of a baller.
But we're not going back. And I do believe
she keeps clip farming the we're not going back. I don't know. I don't like that too much.
What separates us?
Whatever.
And I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
Yo, what's up, Harley?
I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay?
2025.
And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's
Oh
going
my
to do
God.
this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country.
This is a crazy closing statement.
The worst in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia.
Like, your closing statement is supposed to be about you. But, like, he wasted his whole closing statement on, like, trying to shit on her, which is so crazy.